Okay, good evening. If I can interrupt the public and gentlemen, our meeting is starting. Thank you. The hour of 6 p.m. having arrived, I call to order this meeting of the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. Meeting's being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. Video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are in the wall pockets as you just entered the room. The public will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone else has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room. Identify yourself by name and address prior to speaking. Our minute taker is participating remotely. Committee members, turn your microphones on when you're speaking. And if the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask you to speak louder. I call to order this meeting of the MSFI committee and declare we have a quorum present. I do note that Councilor Workman is excused due to illness, but we do have a quorum. So first item on the agenda is a presentation from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation regarding the Route 101 project. We have someone from New Hampshire DOT.
Run that show. Let me slide that one over for us. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dave Smith. I'm the New Hampshire DOT Project Manager for the Keene 41590 project. Wanted to give you a presentation of the project tonight, update of our status, our progress, and schedule moving ahead. We were last here in September of 2023, and gave a presentation of the project. We were very early on at that point. We've made great progress since then with our consultant team, CHA, which is a Keene firm, who I have with me tonight. Alan Mosier to my right, project manager, and John Pirelli, also a CHA to my far right, design engineer. So we'll give a presentation of the project tonight. Should last about, I'd say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then we'll open up for questions and progress down that path and keep us moving along. So the project is located just southeast of Keene on Route 101. Starts just east of Optical Ave, progresses about 1 mile just past Branch Road. Also encompasses a portion of Swansea Factory Road. Looking to improve the intersection there, address the bridge condition, address the roadway condition, deteriorated pavement, and drainage challenge that we have on that segment of roadway. Next slide. So as an agenda for tonight, we have progressed through a couple of these aspects, welcome and introductions. We'll touch a bit more on our project development team. We have worked and collaborated with folks from the City of Keene, the town of Swansea, and the public as well. We've worked with the butters as we progressed along. So we'll give a project overview. We'll talk about our studies to date, which there have been many. We'll talk about our preliminary design, our concept that we've developed through our public outreach and coordination with the project work group. We'll talk about our construction plan and our schedule moving ahead. So as I mentioned, my name is Dave Smith, New Hampshire DOT. Not with me here tonight is Hans Weber. He's our design engineer from the New Hampshire DOT. I introduced both Alan and John. We also have Rob Faulkner in the audience, works for CHA as well. He's been integral in our efforts progressing forward with our CHA team. We've also had great working and collaboration efforts with Don Lucier, City of Keene Public Works Director, J.B. Mack, Assistant Director from the Southwest Regional Planning Commission, the Town of Swansea, Stefan Mayhew, Assistant Town Planner. This is our working group, and our working group gives us that local knowledge, that local insight that we need to guide the project from a scope perspective, from our connection to you folks, and act as our local support in making sure that we're getting the right solution for the needs along that corridor and for projects, any projects that we have at the DOT. So, since we were here last, it's been what, a year and a half or so. We've had a significant amount of public outreach. We have had 2 public informational meetings, one in February of '24, one in December of '24, to share the project with the public, to solicit from the public what they feel the improvements need to be and capture. We've also had a meeting with the Southwest Regional Planning Commission this past January. We met with the town of Swansea a couple weeks ago, two weeks ago tonight. And we've also had many meetings with the abutters out there. This project, as you'll appreciate, will impact properties along the corridor. And so, as a means of goodwill and part of our public outreach, we've had meetings with several of the property owners along the corridor. And we can elaborate on that as we progress, and please ask any questions relative to that. We've had a lot of great collaboration, I'll say, with the public. We've heard, we've solicited from the folks what does need to be captured in there, what's the concerns for this corridor. And we've heard, we asked them what their perspective is on solutions. We brought many solutions to the table that we'll touch on in the presentation later as well. So we've really worked to engage the public here. We've heard about the Swansea Factory Road relocation, which is prompted by the challenging intersection location today. As you folks know, if you're coming up Swansea Factory Road, taking a left or right out of that intersection, sight distance is very challenging looking back to the west. So we've heard from the public and confirmed that that's a challenge that we need to address. We've heard the need for improved or enhanced bike and pedestrian accommodations. We've heard concerns relative to environmental resources, right? We know the Branch River parallels and goes underneath Route 101, so we've heard some concern relative to that we've worked to address and will continue to. We've heard about private property impacts, which we've worked to address and again engage in abutters. We've become knowledgeable and appreciate the Prowse Bridge and the vision for that the city has. Concerns about the 101 bridge, which is a red-listed bridge. We've also heard about potential for roundabouts, the perspective on that. The high travel speeds is a relatively high volume of traffic on Route 101 in that segment, the whole segment actually. So we heard about the Branch Road intersection as well, and construction impacts. And our goal is to work to respond and provide insight to the public and you folks relative to each of these aspects. And we feel we have, we hope we have as we've progressed and reached out and collaborated with the public. So again, all through that public outreach, those public informationals, those abutter meetings and so forth. This is what we've captured and this is what we hope to and plan to address as we progress. So with that, let me turn it to Ellen and John, and they'll get deeper into the details of the project. So with that, Ellen, go ahead.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening. I'm Ellen Mosier with CHA. So as Dave mentioned, the project starts just east of Optical Avenue and continues a mile east to just past Branch Road. There's 2 key intersections in our project area, including the intersection of Swansea Factory Road and the intersection of Branch Road. We'll be talking about both of these this evening. There's also the bridge over the Branch River that we'll be discussing. So the purpose of the project is to provide pavement rehabilitation. Currently, there's a concrete slab under the pavement that's deteriorating that we need to remove and build back up the pavement surface. There's drainage improvements that need to be made. Currently, there is no closed drainage system. We're looking to improve pedestrian and bicycle accommodations along the corridor. We're looking to address the deficiencies at the bridge. And we're also looking to make improvements at the Swansea Factory Road intersection for safety. So Route 101 is one lane in each direction today. We have approximately 12-foot wide travel lanes with varying shoulder widths. We will be widening the road to maintain those 12-foot lanes, but also add 5-foot shoulders on each side of the roadway. So one of the challenges with this project has been the proximity of the Branch River in the resource areas that are close to the pavement. Also, the private properties that abut the side of the road really give us a constrained right-of-way. As a result, we are unable to provide sidewalks and bike lanes along this segment of roadway. It is something that we worked with the working group to discuss, as well as the public. It's something we took a deep dive into. Essentially, due to the right-of-way constraints and the fact that there's no connecting facilities on either end of the project, the decision was made that we would not be providing sidewalks. At the first meeting, we introduced to you some ideas to potentially realign Swansea Factory Road. This included 3 potential bridge locations on the eastern end. We did propose keeping the road where it is today and providing a signal to improve sight distance lines. And we also proposed moving it behind the fastener mill. So we vetted those options with the working group and through the public information meetings. Essentially, we heard that no one wanted a new bridge, so we eliminated those 3 options. We lightly vetted closing the road. This was something that no one wanted to see as it's considered a regional connection. We did develop signal plans to vet alternative 1, keeping the road where it is today. However, with the new bridge structure that we're proposing and the proximity of the buildings at that intersection, we decided providing a signal wasn't really feasible either. So we moved ahead with looking at alternative 2, which is moving the road behind the fastener mill. Along with John Graves, a property owner there, we developed 3 concepts of where this alignment could go and ultimately decided on alternative 2C, which follows some of the state's right-of-way along the railroad spur line that used to exist in this area. So a little bit more about the Branch River Bridge. The bridge is on the state's red list, as Dave mentioned. It was originally built in 1933 and is eligible for the National Register. CHA inspected the structure back in August of 2023. Generally, we found the concrete to be sound. However, on the underside of the bridge, we did find some staining and some signs of deterioration, so we recommended some non-destructive testing. So what we did was we took some concrete core samples, we sent those to the lab, and what we found was high level of chlorides on the decking, and we found something called alkali silica reaction, or ASR, which is essentially a concrete cancer. So with those lab results in hand, we determined that a full bridge replacement is needed at this location. Next, I'm going to turn it over to John to talk a little bit more about the design in detail.
Do you see the hand on that? No.
I'm not sure they can.
No.
No.
All right. All right, thanks, Ellen. I'm just going to go over the plans quickly. The preliminary plans are 4 slides. We'll start on the west end and then gradually move east as we scroll through. North is up on these slides. So first off, yellow represents the proposed paved travel lanes. Brown represents the shoulders. Orange represents driveways and access points. Green represents limits of earthwork. And red is locations of homes and businesses. And the wetlands are the blue striped hatching. And these are all shown over the aerial image. On this slide, on the south portion of the slide is the existing Stone Arch Bridge. To the north, on the left side of the plan, that's existing Marlborough Road as it comes down and dead ends just before it hits Route 101. So Route 101, the project starts just west of the Stone Arch Bridge. As Ellen mentioned, 12-foot lanes and 5-foot shoulders. There's a little red crossing. I don't know if you can see it. That's the future location of the Transportation Heritage Trail as it crosses over Route 101, and that's utilizing the Prowse Bridge that the city has purchased from the state. As we move east past the Prowse Bridge location. We are proposing shifting the Route 101 a little bit south, 3 or 4 feet to the south, while trying to minimize impacts to the floodplain and wetlands. And then this will also help with the minimizing impacts to the properties on the hillside to the north. So next slide. Thank you. So as we move east, the next slide, on the north side of the roadway, that's the larger red building is the Coran Building. That's 640 Marlborough Street. Head a little bit east, we have the Branch River crossing with the bridge. As Dave mentioned, there's some sightline issues, some profile issues with that location. And then we also, just east of the river, is the existing Swansea Factory Road location. Adjacent to the Swansea Factory Road is the Monadnock Housing Building, and then a little bit east of that is the Mighty Moose Mart, and south along Swansea Factory Road is the Factory Mill Building. So we're proposing to close the Swansea Factory Road from Route 101 to just south of the Swansea Factory Mill, and Factory Mill Building. Swansea Factory Road is going to head to the east of the Factory Mill. There's an existing right-of-way for an old railroad spur line in that location. We're going to follow that all the way to the new intersection east of the Moose Mart, where we're proposing a roundabout. The roundabout shown here is 130 feet. That's the same, approximate same size as the roundabout at the other end of Swansea Factory Road. And this will be a single-lane roundabout that will provide some speed mitigation through this section of 101. As we continue east, we got the Keene Mini Storage is still to the north of 101, as well as the Branch River comes back, goes around the mini storage and goes back just adjacent to 101 here. This stretch, we are pretty much holding the same horizontal alignment in this area, but as we move to the next slide, the Branch River still is to the north of 101 along this whole stretch until Branch Road, which is off to the right, that roadway going to the north. We are proposing to shifting the horizontal alignment 3 or 4 feet to the south in this location as well. We're trying to minimize or eliminate any impacts to the floodplain and the wetlands along the Branch River. Through this, we'll probably need to add about 5 retaining walls in front of the homes in that area to minimize impacts to the residences. And as we continue east, we have a left turn lane proposed for the eastbound traffic turning onto Branch Road. Currently today, there's a widened shoulder, people pass cars waiting to make that left turn, a little dangerous situation. This will help be a safer alternative. And then the project ends just east of Branch Road as we taper back down from adding that turn lane. So this slide has our best management practices, so some potential stormwater mitigation areas. This shows the whole project area. So we have one location to the west at the beginning of the project, kind of in the location of where Marlborough Street ends and at Route 101, so that could be a treatment swale in that location. Then we're also showing a couple potential locations along the existing Swansea Factory Road that's being discontinued. Those can be either a treatment swale or a detention basin of some sort. And then we also have a potential BMP to the east of Branch Road, and that will most likely be a basin. There is an existing stream that continues in a closed system in the area of the Coran Building. At this time, we aren't proposing any changes to that system. And I'll turn it back over to Ellen.
Thanks, John. So we expect construction to start in the spring of 2027. It'll last about 2 years. We've been working closely with Don and his team to discuss reconstructing the water line through this portion of road as well. During construction, we do anticipate that we can keep the road open to traffic. However, at some times we will need to have alternating one-way traffic. We expect to have a temporary signal to control traffic during these times. We may also need to detour traffic, and this is something we're just starting to look at. We would detour traffic down Swansea Factory Road and back up to Main Street. However, we do understand that there's limitations with the roundabout there and the capacity of that roundabout. We do think that some folks might use Branch Road if they're headed into downtown to bypass the construction. However, this is something we're continuing to look at and something we'll continue to work with the city on as we move forward. So we did conduct a bat study this summer. We did an acoustic survey. We did find 2 species of concern. We found the northern long-eared bat, which is endangered. We also found the tricolored bat, which is proposed to be endangered. Essentially, this means we will need to have some limitations on when we can do clearing during construction. As far as wetland impacts, there will be approximately 21,000 square feet of permanent wetland impacts and 490 linear feet of stream impacts with the project. So our work to date has also included an architectural survey plan. The properties noted here could potentially have some historic integrity. We are moving forward with additional survey of these properties. Right now, our project is seeking to avoid any impacts to those properties, and we will continue to be mindful of them as we move forward. We also conducted some archaeological assessments. The areas in yellow were shown to have some sensitivity, and we looked at these areas as part of the Swansea Factory Road relocation. Once we decided on alternative 2 behind the fastener mill, we did some additional GPR, ground penetrating radar studies shown in the green areas here. Area 2, adjacent to the Branch River, essentially is filled area, and we didn't have any findings there. GPR Area 1, shown here where the roundabout is, could potentially have some structural remains associated with the former mill uses, so we propose to continue to monitor that location during construction.
Yeah, so continuing along with the environmental aspect, as you can appreciate with Ellen's narrative, there's a lot of requirements that we are complying with because of the federal funding of the project. It's an 80-20 split between the federal funding and state funding. And so with one of those requirements is the development of a NEPA document, a National Environmental Policy Act document. Captures all of our environmental aspects, makes sure that we have addressed all of those aspects. We're compliant with all those rules and regulations. Specific to the 106, Section 106 is Natural Historic Preservation Act, offers the public an opportunity to be engaged in the project from a consulting party to guide the awareness, the insights for that aspect of the project. We solicit this opportunity at all of our public meetings. If anybody would like to be engaged from a Section 106 consultant party perspective, they can contact me. I would put them in contact with our federal highway representative, and there would be some coordination relative to that collaboration and involvement from that person or party for that effort. So we're progressing along. Ellen, I think we'll talk also relative to our environmental status here, but we're progressing along here relative to that. So let me continue. So project schedule. So as you can see, we've had a lot of public outreach. We've progressed with the design to a large degree. We feel that we have a preferred alternative in our collaboration with the public, with our working group, which incorporates really a very broad set of improvements, addressing the bridge condition, addressing the roadway condition, the drainage condition, the safety at Swansea Factory Road being mitigated. Introducing that roundabout will mitigate speeds along that corridor. And so I feel this is a very, very impactful project, certainly justifying the funding that we're dedicating towards this project. We'll continue with these efforts as we progress. As we progress to our public hearing, this concludes, unless you folks would like us back or need to have us back again prior to the hearing, but we're targeting a public hearing later this summer. It's a formal meeting for us. It's overseen by a commission of 3 members that will ultimately determine the necessity for the project and allow us, ideally, to progress to the final design aspect of the project. That final design would run from 2026 through into 2027 as we develop our right-of-way plans, our construction plans, get our environmental permits in place, and acquire right-of-way for the improvements. So although we've done a great amount of work so far, we're transitioning and would be transitioning to the final design phase after that public hearing. So it's a big pivot point for us. And then, of course, as we talked about, construction starting in the spring of 2027. We currently have a $17 million construction estimate for the project, and plan to continue along and follow this schedule as we do progress. So I believe that is our last slide. So at this point, if you have any questions, we'd be welcome to answer any questions, provide any insight that you folks would like.
One question, and then I'll ask the committee.
Certainly.
Is there any taking of private property to do this project?
Yes, there is. So as you can appreciate, we're widening out the roadway itself along the whole corridor, 4 to 6 feet along the corridor. We're introducing formal drainage ditches along the corridor, and so that alone will at least require a strip acquisition across the frontage of probably every property along Route 101 itself. There will also likely be, because of the nature of the roadway and the river, there will likely be a need for easements as well to accommodate our slope improvements, either cuts into the embankment or fills on the low side. For a good portion of the project, say where of course the river sits low, and in that same area, the residences sit high. So we're threading that needle with the improvements and likely incorporating retaining walls, as was mentioned. So those will require some construction and easements as well. I would offer, and certainly not to dismiss any of the strip acquisitions and those right-of-way acquisitions I've mentioned, there are other more significant right-of-way impacts. With the relocation of Swansea Factory Road, there will be the need to acquire properties from Fastener Mill owner. We've talked to John several times. Also, we've talked to Mr. Jay Blanchard relative to that reconstruction and relocation of Swansea Factory Road and the impact of his property. The footprint of the roundabout is right on Mr. Blanchard's building, so we've had a constructive discussion with him and his council relative to that. We're assessing opportunities going forward, ideally knowing that that building is on a slab and not a full foundation. We've talked about the opportunity to move that and try to make him whole in that current location. Other locations or other right-of-way impacts we're still assessing as we work to finalize our roadway alignments and our bridge work and our phasing for that. And we'll progress and we'll fine-tune that as we continue along. So,
Okay. You partially answered my question. Residences, have they been notified that this is going on?
yes, residents have been notified. At both public informational meetings we've had, we sent out mailers to all properties along the corridor, and even beyond. The second public information we had, we sent over 2,000 mailers out to mail routes that were along the corridor and even extended into some of the downtown areas. And that's simply because of the mail routes that they were on.
My
But
question really is for maybe the 6 or 8 homes, people that own land, that there is a potential eminent domain action.
well, eminent domain is not a process that we would first be pursuing, just for
Of
awareness.
course, you want to do it friendly first.
Absolutely, yes. So we've met with several of the abutters. We'll continue to meet with abutters as we progress. Have they been contacted? All the residents have been contacted there. We haven't talked to every property owner on the corridor. There's probably 35 to 40 property owners along the corridor. We have not talked to all of them. We'll certainly coordinate with folks that reach out to us, and certainly those folks that we feel and find are the most significantly impacted, like Mr. Graves, like the Keene Mini Storage. We've talked with Monadnock Affordable Housing. We've talked with Prime Roast. Who else have we talked to? We have had some coordination with Mighty Moose Mart owners as well. So we're striving to do our diligence relative to that outreach.
Okay, thank you. Committee, question? Yeah, Jake.
Just one quick question, and thank you for this presentation, and particularly I think it's timely for this stretch to have the increased shoulder. So I was happy to see that. Is this slideshow available on the project website at dot.nh.gov, or is this?
It will be,
Okay.
yes. We have, so what you see at the bottom here, that's a direct link to the project website. We haven't posted this specific presentation yet, but like all the others that we have had, those public informational meetings, we will post this certainly within the next week, and it'll be there for reference going forward. So yes. We also post the meeting minutes. We typically develop a brief meeting minute for each of the meetings we have, a majority of them at the least, as well as post any mailers or any other information that's relevant to the presentation and outreach that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything? Nope. Okay. This is a public discussion, so if members of the public want to ask a question or make a comment, it is appropriate. I didn't say counselors, but Counselor Haas.
Ed Haas, 114 Jordan Road, in my role as the public. Could the panel advise us on traffic control at Branch Road when this is completed? We're familiar with the hazards of left-hand turn lanes, and as this road gets expanded, and it's great sight lines there, the velocity through it will be pretty significant. We have a full red light stop at Optical, which does a good job there with that left-hand turn lane, but Branch Road's going to be a tough one.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did look closely at Branch Road. We did hear concerns about speeding and safety at the intersection. We looked at potentially installing a signal at that location. It does not meet signal warrants, unfortunately. We did look at potentially installing a roundabout, and due to the steep hillside opposite the road and the bridge structure that currently exists on Branch Road, we really can't put a roundabout in that location either. So we went back to our traffic model and we assessed what we could do for improvements. And there's a couple things we're doing. One is adding the left turn lane. So going eastbound, there will be a left turn lane added into Branch Road. The other thing we're doing is we're going to realign the center line on that road. So currently you kind of veer to the right to make a left turn. Within the existing pavement width, we can realign that to improve visibility at that intersection, as well as do extensive clearing. So when we went out and looked at it, a lot of the challenges at that location, in addition to the speeds, is really the sight lines there and the vegetation along that stretch. So we'll be doing some clearing, and as Dave mentioned, and John I think mentioned as well, having the roundabout installed at Swansea Factory Road is going to change the character of this section of Route 101, and that should in turn reduce speeds and make operations at Branch Road better as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Vicki.
Vicki Morton, 275 Water Street. Could you review again your plan for the sidewalk bike lane? You talked about a portion of it. Could you share how far that goes again? Or is it completely eliminated?
I can speak to that. So we don't have a formal sidewalk in the project right now. We have had coordination and discussion with the city relative to it, at least our working group, representatives on the work group from the city. Relative to connectivity, relative to the presence, we know there's a presence out there. We know at the east end of our project, there are folks that have a necessity to walk into town. We are aware of the fatality that happened a short while ago to the west of our project. And part part of our purpose and need is to enhance bike and pedestrian opportunities. So, given the restrictions that we've talked about, which are the river and the residences, it is a challenge to put in a sidewalk. We haven't fully dismissed it, but it would incur additional impacts, both from right-of-way and/or residence perspective or resource perspective. And with the lack of connecting infrastructure, that being no sidewalks that would connect to this, say, 1 mile section of sidewalk, we, at this time, elected not to implement sidewalks in the project. The 5-foot shoulders will be more formal. They'll be offer some relief for bikers and pedestrians, but certainly not to the extent that a sidewalk would. So that's what we've had for discussion. We are aware also that the Transportation Heritage Trail progresses to the west end of the project, and our commitment to the project, to that project from the city's perspective, the Prowse Bridge, is not to preclude that to be built from our project improvements. We've worked with Dawn and Brian relative to that. That we've had discussion even trying to sync our project up with the implementation of that bridge project. We've committed to continue to progress together, and to assess how funding comes ahead for the city's side of that. So that's what we have had for discussions and collaboration from a sidewalk perspective.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep. And you.
Tim Jordan, 275 Water Street. This question may be better for the public hearing in the summer, and if that's so, then just tell me that. But the 17 million, is that today's dollars, or is that projected out for when the construction is in '27? And the other thing is, given the political climate that we're in today, and the state's currently looking to cut their budget, is there a plan B or C if this thing doesn't go through because we can't fund it? Are there alternative plans or thinking? And if so, I'd like to hear about it, but I don't want to hear about it today necessarily, because I don't want to confuse people, because if we get too many plans out there, people start raising their hand for this one or that one. But I would like to know if there's some thinking about, if the funding gets reduced or something happens, what are we going to do about the problems that we're trying to solve? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the 17 million is today's dollars, current dollars. Relative to the availability of funding in the future, we feel that we're stable at this point. Our leadership in the New Hampshire DOT Executive Office is working with our federal highway leadership as well to appreciate what the transition in national leadership means for us on a transportation level. At this point, I'm still confident that we will have funding as we progress. And so we'll continue to evaluate, we'll continue to progress with the expectation that we will have construction funding in 2 to 2.5 years to fund this project as we progress.
Thank you. Anything further? City Attorney.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question, understanding the issues associated with the land acquisitions and having had some experience with those and working through your negotiations, it's clear that you will need to have all of those acquisitions in place before you can start construction, is that right?
That's absolutely right, yes.
Right. So you're anticipating those will happen before that date starts?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Have to hope. Okay, motion, Counselor.
Move to recommend the acceptance of the presentation on New Hampshire Department of Transportation reconstruction of Route 101 as informational.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further from the public or committee? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Safe ride back.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Are you going on Route 9?
Yes, yeah.
That'll be a question for later. Remember that, it's on the list.
All right.
We almost had it restriped. when the weather killed it. Okay, item number 2, verbal update regarding the accelerated tree removal timeline concerning red pine scale. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me back. I know that the last time that I was here, I was able to give an update on this invasive pest species that we have in Keene at the current moment, the red pine scale, which impacts our red pine trees. And we have a monoculture out at Wheelock Park. All of the history is there. The presentation that I had last time, I was able to pass around a red pine branch. I do not have that branch for you this evening. We recently met last Thursday with our New Hampshire Division of Forest and Land Foresters. They came out to inform us that the best time to harvest is in the winter. So we're not talking about removing all of the red pine trees right now. We are talking about accelerating the removal of the educational pilot tract, which is along the now defunct roadway in between the bike park and the ball fields. I do have an aerial photo that I have copies of. If you would like to see what that looks like, I can very easily share that with you.
Sure, if you have them.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. So in essence, what we are talking about having happen in the next couple of weeks is removing about 50 red pine trees from that one educational pilot tract. And the reason that the foresters are recommending a winter removal is that the red pine scale itself is dormant during the winter months, so we would be able to take down the trees without spreading red pine scale during this time. What we plan to do with those trees, once they are taken down, is we plan to use sections of them for our bike park retaining wall side structures. We're going to replace some of the red pine that they've already used for that in 15 or 20-foot sections, and we are able to chip the rest at no impact to the rest of the park and the rest of the trees, as long as we get them down in the next couple of weeks. So then it comes to funding and timing. What we have scheduled is next Wednesday, the foresters will be running a chainsaw class with 5 members of our Parks and Recreation team and 5 members of our Public Works team. So we'll be taking a handful of trees down at that point. We also have a meeting scheduled within the next week to meet with Phil's Tree to take care of the rest of the trees, and that funding is made available through the additional funding that was secured by Public Works for the storm removal. There is still funding available in that open PO. So that's what we plan on using for the funding to take down this tract of 50 trees.
Is there any action that we need to take?
This is just informational.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Just checking. Committee? Public? Motion.
Move we accept the report as informational?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. And anything further? Public? Committee? All in favor? Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, item 3. Unresolved design decisions for the downtown infrastructure project. Yes, it's been a month or 2 since we've talked about Main Street. No need to refresh the whole project.
It seems like only yesterday,
Oh,
Mr. Chair.
It's a gift that keeps giving.
So, let me just get this
Yes.
queued up here.
So we have a number of items that we haven't decided, and I note that in addition to the 3 that are up for conversation, we're not going to be talking about the color of the bike lanes this evening, right?
Correct.
That's good. And the other item I'll bring up later. Go ahead. You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. With me tonight, we have Bob Corning, sorry. Sorry, Bob. Bob Corning and Ed Roberts from Stantec, our design consultant for the project. So there are a couple of items that were there were a couple of items that were discussed previously, but haven't been fully resolved. So we're here again to kind of talk through some of those lingering details, if you will. And with any luck, the presentation will pop up here in just a second. Or not.
Sorry, I have it on my end too.
That would be a good color.
apologize, everyone.
No, just start talking.
Yep, just
And with that, I'll hand it over to Bob.
Thanks, Don.
There we go.
We've been working on a number of design refinements, following up on a couple of the discussions that we've had with both MSFI and the council. So tonight, we're going to look at some options for the fountain at the Central Square Green, looking at some paving design updates, the pavilion structure at Railroad Square, and then the Director of Public Works will give an update on the bollards, the trash receptacle, and then the over-the-street banner signs.
And to that end, I will say the agenda that you have in front of you, the packet that you have, the recommended motion includes a couple of items with fill in the blanks. So as we go along, we can talk about the blanks that we're looking for you to fill in for us.
So starting with the Central Square fountain, if you recall, an original concept was to have the fountain to be replaced with a design that was either through a design competition or through an artist. But subsequently, it was decided that the fountain should be part of the project. And so we've been looking at some alternatives for the fountain design, the revised or new fountain design. One of the things that we were inspired by was this historic photo that Don was able to find that had this kind of Victorian historic fountain that was in the square. And that was very inspiring to us, and so we looked at options to maybe incorporate something similar into a proposed design. So what we're calling option one would be a new fountain located in the center of the central circle, in the center of the square. And again, it would be, we were able to find a kind of off-the-shelf product. It's called a Caesar fountain. It's produced by Robinson Iron, very similar to that historic fountain that was in the photograph. We're also considering reusing the original Einbeck stone, which is the perimeter, the whitish granite around the perimeter. It's kind of the octagon shape in the existing fountain. And so the center portion would be removed and replaced with this cast iron feature. And again, the water comes up bubbles up through the top and then cascades through those various dishes or bowls down into the base of the fountain. So this is what it would look like in a perspective view. We're also proposing to include a semicircular seat wall along the eastern edge of the circle to kind of provide a backdrop to the fountain, but then also it kind of focuses on, orients you to the grandstand, so to the gazebo. So if there was a performance or something happening at the gazebo, you could sit at the fountain wall or you could sit at the seat wall. The second option was actually looking at relocating the fountain to the edge and actually incorporating it into the seat wall. And so, again, it would be very similar. We would relocate the existing granite at the perimeter, at the fountain base that exists, and incorporate it into that seat wall that we were showing in the previous version. The cast iron fountain would still be proposed in this option as well. And this is what that would look like. So again, it frees up, provides multi-use space in the center of that circle, puts the fountain off to one side, incorporates it into a seat wall. One of the things that we would need to look at is, some of the existing granite pieces on that perimeter, on that fountain base existing are cracked. And would we damage it further by, removing it and relocating it, or even the pieces that aren't cracked? And so that was one thing that we'd have to look at into more detail. But there was a lot of appeal to this in terms of having it kind of offset from the center and as a separate feature. So those are the two options that we've developed to date.
So I'm going to jump in here and take Bob off the hook a little bit. I know this was discussed previously during the project, and I think the committee certainly expressed a preference that the fountain stay where it is. I asked them to put this on tonight's agenda because I would like to take one more crack at it. I think it's very appealing, this concept, in that it frees up the space in the plaza for events and whatnot. It also creates a much more usable space for viewers to be able to sit and watch the events that are happening on the bandstand. So I know that you've already expressed an opinion that the fountain should stay where it is, but I'm hoping that these graphics will convince you to think about that option.
Well, Mr. Director, your comments are very, very convincing. However, I like option one. I liked it before. I like it even better now. Hearing that it would retain the existing granite sounds like a cost saving also by doing that. Committee, you like just comments?
Agreeing with my chair on this one. Keep it short and sweet.
Councilor Tobin?
I do actually kind of like it off to the side, personally. I'm not gonna, I don't have a strong preference, but that would be what
Okay,
that'd be my
hear your comment. Public, anyone want to weigh in on the subject?
Yes.
Okay, you're up next.
Yeah, I'm Bradford Hutchinson, Marlborough Street, and this is the first I'm seeing about this, and my first initial reaction is, no, the fountain should be in the center. And the fountain is something that comes up, it's water coming up out of the ground. I can't really put this into words. I'm looking at the images showing the fountain over to the side. I understand the idea of wanting to have that more open space. That would facilitate larger crowds. And is that by itself a good thing? Do we want to encourage a larger crowd, or do we want to have a more broken up crowd with the fountain in the center? These are some of the questions that I think we're going to have to ask. I don't want to see the fountain moved away from the center of the common. I think the fountain, you can't walk through it. You have to walk around it. Wherever it's placed, you can't walk through it. You have to walk around it. Having it be in the exact center, it's kind of like a roundabout in a way. If you think about it, you have to go around it one way or the other. And I don't know if I'm explaining this very well in words, but it just seems to me very wrong to move it away from the center of the common.
Thank you.
And that's all I'm saying. It looks nice. Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Morton?
Vicki Morton, 275 Water Street. I would encourage you to leave it where it is. I think, I'm going to get a lot of crap for this one, I know it.
No, not from me.
I think we really need to look at cost cutting, and if we move it, we're going to have to move water lines. If any of those Einbeck marble pieces get destroyed, now we're fixing or replacing or whatever, leave it where it is. It's one place, it may only save $2, but the fact is we got to start looking at this project and cutting some costs.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I was just hoping to get some clarification from the Public Works Director about why he thinks it would be better on the side. Is there a structural issue or just
Purely an aesthetic preference.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about, so if we keep it in the center, when I agree with the majority of my colleagues on the committee and the two public comments, that the Central Square fountain should be centered in Central Square. And I apologize to the minute taker for that, the alliteration there. Are we still getting the new fountain design with that, and what does that cost look like?
Do you have a cost on that? Okay, yeah, I don't think that we've gotten a quote for that particular fountain, but what we heard previously was that there isn't a lot of love for the stone configuration that there is there now, so we were planning to replace that with the cast iron fountain on either of these options.
Okay, just so we can get moving, Chair is going to move to recommend option one.
Second that, agree with that?
Second, okay. And Laura, where are you? No?
Good.
I can be on board.
Okay.
Okay.
It was worth a shot, Mr. Chair.
Good try.
And it was very convincing.
Yeah, almost.
Okay, next topic.
Thank you. So moving on to paving, and really we're focusing on the pedestrian areas, the sidewalks, crosswalks, things like that, and in the public open spaces. So as you recall, in some of the previous versions that we presented, we were proposing a combination of concrete sidewalks for the main pedestrian corridors, and then accent zones, buffers for the bike lane, the commercial zones in front of the buildings, some of the crosswalks we were proposing as different types of unit pavers, such as concrete unit pavers, brick, or even granite potentially in some locations. And as you recall, there was a lot of concern raised by not only this committee, but the council and Public Works and Engineering about maintenance of those types of paving systems, as well as the cost. So we went back and looked at opportunities to propose colored concrete, patterned concrete, those types of systems where it would be a concrete base system, and the way that we could differentiate it from standard concrete is by different patterning or different coloring. So this is an enlargement of the crossing at the rail trail. Gilbo's on the upper left, railroad's on the right. You can see Railroad Square in the lower right, and the large raised intersection at Main Street and Railroad. So our preliminary idea was to come up with a series of different patterns and colors of concrete. There's a whole myriad of different colors available. There's a whole myriad of different patterns available. We were trying to focus more on a traditional herringbone, kind of a brick scale herringbone system. And again, these are all just stamped and colored. And we would do different colors and patterns for the different pedestrian zones. So, for instance, the intersection, we have the multi-use zones at the corners of the intersections. We have the buffer strip between the bike lane and the parking. We have the furnishing zone that's kind of between the planters. And then we have the commerce zone along the face of the buildings. And so these would all be a little bit different, but be in the same vocabulary of color and patterns. One of the other things that we looked at, a concern that we heard was for the bike lanes, was having those painted, the bright green color, the typical bike lane, the standard bike lane bright green color. So there's a lot of discussion about whether, I think the vote was to have it concrete, and if it was going to be concrete, are there opportunities to have that as a colored concrete? So I think Don just passed around a couple of samples for what that, couple of green type samples. They're a lot more muted than that bright green color, but those are a couple of options for colored concrete that would potentially could be used for the railroad, for the bike lanes.
So I'll jump in here. Like we said at the beginning, Mr. Chair, we're not asking you to pick a color tonight. My intention is still to actually create some samples down at Public Works so you can see a full-size sample and see exactly what it would look like. That'll be done, in the springtime, early summer. But I did hand out those samples just because we had gotten those from the vendor, so you could take a look at kind of what we're thinking. The other thing I will say is, in terms of the different textures and patterns that's shown on the graphics here, we're not asking you to make a vote or pick anything here tonight. All of these, the sort of patterning details are sort of within the umbrella of what the council has already decided. If you have a strong opinion, we would love to hear it. But otherwise, I don't feel like we need you to pick a specific pattern. There will be some patterns done with the samples that we're planning for later this summer.
Okay. My colorblindness is such that I thought those two were the same.
They're actually very similar
Yeah,
in your defense, but
a larger sample, I think, would be.
yeah. So we're
great
planning
idea.
to do a couple of sections of like 5 by 10, and different sections, different colors and patterns.
And also one of natural, the base.
Yeah, we'll probably do one of the greens, a couple of different red-brown tones, and one just plain old gray concrete.
So this is just discussion, no
Just
decision.
just wanted to show you kind of how it's progressing.
Good. Thank you.
Just a quick question. So when you do come with this, I definitely want to know any cost differentials, because it is time to tighten the belt on this project.
Understood.
So that'd be my main concern is, two things. One, I'm smooth, because you don't want people that are handicapped and have, handicapped vehicle or walkers or whatever have to go through the old pavers we used to have. So that's one thing, keep it as smooth as possible. And the other thing is keep the price in line and let us know the difference.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Good. Okay, next, onward.
Oh, we did have a slide on railroads, we just, it's the same.
Yeah, no, I think, keep going.
The next item is the pavilion and Railroad Square. This was the plan that was proposed previously, and we had a small square pavilion kind of located in the center. You kind of see it as this dash box here in the center. The concerns we heard were it wasn't large enough for fixed seating, wasn't large enough for covered bikes, and it really wasn't useful as a covered pavilion because of the size of it. And so we've looked at a number of different options for that. The option that's kind of risen to the top is this product. It's actually an off-the-shelf item produced by Landscape Forms. It's a modular pavilion system. They come in about modules of about 15 by 15. They can have a louver roof. They could have a solid roof. The wall panels can vary. They could be a perforated metal. They could be open. They could be a perforated metal. They could be a louver system. And then there's a whole number of different accessories that could be added, whether it's seating, whether it's leaning rails. There's a whole number of different items that could be attached or included as part of this system. So what we're currently proposing is that we would have two of these structures side by side, but then offset slightly for interest. And then there'd be a small area that would not be covered, would be a freestanding rail, potentially with a kind of an interpretive panel included into it. And that would provide a little bit of a vertical separation between the bike path and this structure. And this structure could include fixed seating, it could include flexible seating, covered bike racks, or bike racks that weren't covered. So just a couple of views. So the view on the left is if you were kind of standing above the bike trail, looking back at it, you can see that kind of freestanding railing in the front. That interpretive panel would probably be two-sided. And you can start to see in both of these images, there are bike racks that are under the covered area and bike racks that are outside the area. So that's one option for consideration. We also looked at the idea of doing something that's a little bit maybe more traditional in terms of its character and style. These all have kind of a stone base with wood structure, metal or wood roofs. And so these would potentially be a little bit more in keeping with the architectural style of downtown Keene. And they are modular to some extent and customizable, depending on what the product is. And then another option are these tensile cover structures. So basically there are these fixed posts with these canvas structures that span between the posts. There's a lot of different colors, styles, and details that you can use for these types of systems. Then the last option is similar to the first option, but a little bit more simpler, where it would just be kind of a wood structure with a metal frame. And again, there's a lot of these that are kind of off-the-shelf items that could be used in this situation.
Counselor?
As I said at the full council meeting, I can't favor any of these. I think these are unneeded expense to the taxpayers. I think we've told them as a committee that we're going to do what needs to be done and not really extend beyond anything else. If a nonprofit group wants to come in and do a fundraiser and build these, that's fine. But once again, I can't justify this to the taxpayers who are already on the hook for this, and we don't know what the exact dollar is going to be, but I think this is just frivolous waste of money.
Understand your hesitation, Counselor. The vote of the council was to include this structure as a bid alternate. So we're basically looking for some guidance as to what structure gets included as that bid alternate.
Well, you heard my words of guidance.
Yes, Laura.
I like the first option, the modular option with, what are we calling it, the little table that you can lean on?
Oh, the leaning rail?
The leaning rail, yeah. I would go for that one.
Yep, Council.
Two comments. First, I like this kind of final alternative, which I think is the simplest, and I think is probably closer to. The second comment was that the council was divided over the inclusion of one shaded structure. I'm not sure the council is going to be interested in two offset with the leaning rail and all of that. I don't know that, putting that in there as a bid alternate is setting it up for a real conversation. I think the council would be pretty against that. I would like to see it's the final slide here, it's alternative metal/wood structure, just the one of them. It's my 2 cents on it.
I sense that the way that this discussion and vote's going to go will be the two of you better agree on which one you want to put up, because the two of us are going to say none. I'm just summarizing.
I agree with that
What do you want to put forward? Jacob, Laura?
I guess because we're going to be split anyhow, I would just put our comments on record and let it just go to full council as a non-decision on this,
But-
because we are a split.
But if something has to go forward, yes.
I would put forward then nothing.
We got the none.
Yeah.
But
That's what I want to put forward.
Something is going forward
The,
as.
the dilemma I have, Mr. Chair, is the council told us that we have to bid something as a bid alternate. Right now, I don't know what that something is.
That's why I'm asking the two that are going to support it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really don't like this one personally. I wouldn't mind just one of something else. This one and
The canvas one?
the first two I liked, I think. I like this one here has sort of the archway that I can see is reflected in a lot of other architecture in the area. The last one, it does sort of remind me of, it looks like a picnic area, like it belongs in a park, and that's why I'm kind of struggling with that.
And I understand that. Of the two that you like, I like the second one best. I just don't. If we get a bid back on two shade structures offset with the rail, it's going to be unacceptable to the council, I think. And so I am hesitant to put that in there. I could switch to this stone brick column base with a cover structure if that's what is needed to move something forward to council.
You're okay with that?
Okay.
Okay, so let your notes and the record reflect that the two on the committee that want to see this thing, that's the one that they want, and the other two are going to likely strike it from the project.
Thank
Moving
you for your
forward.
assistance.
What else you want? Next decision.
Okay, next there's the bollards. So there was a pretty clear desire from the committee and the council to include removable bollards as part of the project. And the intention of these would be bollards that we could deploy for community events in lieu of the Jersey barriers and, trucks that we park out on the street for perimeter security for those community events now. And I think that's originated with a business request or complaint, I should say, that during the community event, there was a dump truck parked in front of their storefront all day long, and it basically hid their storefront from their customers. They felt like they were kind of excluded from the event. The idea would be to have something a little more attractive, but also allow people to see the businesses, be less unsightly and obstructive. So we looked at a couple of different options. On the left, you see a system it's a removable bollard. Underneath the ground, there's a support structure that's embedded in concrete. These are shockingly expensive. Each one of those bollards is a little over $3,600. Now, I should bring up this plan, yeah. Let me take a step back. We sat down with the Highway Department and the folks at Keene PD to look at, like, what would we need to do in order to accommodate all of the different events and have some flexibility. So with this graphic, the solid red bars show where we would install high-speed security bollards. Now, these are rated to stop a truck going 50 miles an hour. You can see, I don't know if you can see if I use the pointer here. No, I don't think so. Can you? Oh, you can, good. So there's different areas where these would be installed. So, you would obviously see them at the perimeter, but for example, here at the head of Main Street, we would install them. The idea is to give flexibility for the different size events that have to be accommodated. So, some events might only require the security around Central Square. Some might require Central Square and the northern part of Main Street. Some require, like the Food Fest goes all the way down to Emerald Street. So the red solid bars would be the high-speed, high-security bollards. The blue outline shapes that you see, like here on Church Street or Cypress Commercial, those are a slightly lighter weight version. They're designed to stop a automobile going up to 30 miles an hour. So it's not quite as heavy duty, but we could use those in areas where, a heavy duty truck doesn't really have an opportunity to get going 50 miles an hour. So we could save a little bit of money there. And then the third thing, you see these areas with these dashed boxes. This is where we can get away with just simply a permanently installed fixed bollard that wouldn't be removed, but we don't need to get vehicle traffic through there. It's just for pedestrians and bicyclists, and a bollard in the middle, for example, of the bike trail next to the transportation center will be able to solve that need. So altogether, we would require about 154 bollards in order to complete this plan as it was kind of designed by the Highway and Police Department. So with the cost of each of those bollards, got too many presentations open. Each one of these is being over $3,600 just for the materials, not including installation. With installation, those bollards would add up to about $715,000. I don't feel very comfortable recommending that be the way we go forward. So we looked at other options. The picture on the right is a portable system that we found. Unfortunately, I can't give you a quote for these tonight. We've reached out to the vendor, but we haven't gotten a price back yet. But these are, they're stored off-site. There's nothing below ground. There's no construction below ground. Basically, they're large steel devices on wheels. They can be rolled off of a trailer and placed in the roadway. They're chained together so that they can still stop a truck with, minimal amount of impact or intrusion into the event zone. So they are intended for event security. But we expect they're going to be considerably cheaper than those built-in models. My suggestion for tonight, and again, this was something that we were directed to include in the bid documents as a bid alternate. My suggestion for the council is to eliminate the built-in bollards. They're really just cost prohibitive. Instead, if we want to go forward with the deployable version, we'll call them, there's no reason to have that as part of the bid for its project. If we want to try these out, we can buy a small number, try them out in a few locations, see how we like them, and if the council wants to keep moving forward, we can buy them over time. But I can't recommend, spending nearly $1 million on bollards.
No, I get it.
And honestly, they're not even saving a lot of labor. Each one of those pipes is over 1,000 pounds. So that it still requires equipment, you know, a machine with a chain in order to put them in place. I just don't think it's a practical solution.
No, I get it. It's an amazing amount of money, and I never would have thought
Yeah.
it was quite so complex. I thought it was a pipe with a pipe filled with concrete, and we could do it ourselves.
Right.
But
Yeah,
apparently not.
to get them to be crash rated for event security, you know, to sort of protect against the, you know, the kind of attack like we saw in New Orleans a few months ago, that's what's required. It really has to be pretty robust.
So what does our emergency management people have to say, city manager? Or?
So the system that we're using right now, the Jersey barriers, the trucks parked across the roadway, satisfies the need for event security, just as well as those deployable metal devices would. You know, really what we would be gaining with those deployable devices is something that's a little more aesthetic. It doesn't obstruct views into the event or to storefronts, then that's really been the concern that we've heard.
And we could do a combination of that and Jersey barriers.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. And if the council wants to go forward with that, that's how I would suggest we do it. We can start with a sort of a starter kit of these things and use them in those specific locations where we've had complaints about, you know, stores or visibility being obstructed. And then from there, we can add to them if it's something that the council wants to do. But that would allow us to sort of implement it over time.
Good. And then there also is the cost savings of not having dump trucks and public works staff.
Yeah,
standing
so
around
these
all
would
day.
be easier, that we wouldn't have to have the staff on site during the event in order to move them. We'd probably have just like one person with the equipment to move one of these bollards if they needed to, for example, get an ambulance into the event.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm agreeing. And I'm one early on that asked for the estimate on the bollards, and those certainly are cost prohibitive.
Right.
I think these temporary ones actually do fit the bill. And there's a cost either way. But I think putting multi-million-dollar fire trucks as a Jersey barrier, in my opinion, is not a good use of a fire truck. Or your multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment,
right.
and having half the public works department on site.
Right.
So I think the permanent ones seem to be cost prohibitive. I think that's a great idea to take a look at those, and maybe an occasional Jersey barrier, maybe on the side streets or something. So I would definitely recommend moving forward and coming back with a cost estimate on these. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jake, Laura, public or anybody? Okay, so you have a consensus there.
Very good. The rest of the presentation for you tonight is really just sort of an update verbally. On the trash receptacles, the direction from the council previously was to bid out the trash compactors as a bid alternate, and I will willingly admit that I was a proponent of the trash compactors. Again, we did get a quote for those units. Each pair, a pair being one trash receptacle, one recycling container, and they ship together as a unit. Each pair of those is $8,580. So again, I did some quick back of the envelope math. For those to pay for themselves, it will take approximately 30 years of deferred staff time and, you know, the savings of not having to empty them quite as often. So, again, I can't really recommend that be a viable solution. And I'm suggesting we just go with the standard trash can that was selected as the base option.
Agreed?
Great. Hold your cards. We have a bingo.
Good, okay.
I had a feeling that one would get some.
On the receptacles and benches and whatnot, the city logo.
Yeah, so I think, as I recall, the decision was really related to the bicycle racks. And the decision was to just do the bicycle racks and make it so that we can add the logo at a future date.
Fine.
So that's how we're moving forward with that.
Good, thank you. Good enough.
Yep.
Next,
The next item is the over-the-street banner. This is just an update on that. We did do some evaluation of the, what that banner would look like, how big it would have to be, to the infrastructure in order to support the banner and whatnot. We have a meeting scheduled with the original requester. I believe it's in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we want to have a meeting with the folks that are asking for that banner first. Once we make sure that, what we're suggesting or proposing is going to meet their expectations, we're going to come forward at our next update with a recommendation on that.
Yeah.
Bring up the idea of maybe not across Main Street, but maybe across Gilbo, Lamson Street, Church Street, just float that.
Okay,
It might
very
get
good.
to the same.
Yeah. So more to follow on that, but, I've got to have something to talk about during these monthly updates, so.
Good.
And then on the last topic is sort of a catch-all for sort of next steps. So right now, there's 4 areas that we know we need to coordinate with individual property owners on. So in the next couple weeks, with any luck, I'll get a letter out to all of the property owners that have properties abutting this project. Those 4 areas involve, first, service connections. So, the cities, like we do on all infrastructure projects, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before, like we do on all infrastructure projects, we're going to replace, for example, the water service up to the property line, the sewer service up to the property line. In the case of most of the project limits, the property line is essentially the building face. One of the things we want to coordinate with property owners on is if they would like us to take that service connection past the property line and bring it right up to their meter or through the building wall. We're not supposed to spend public money on private property, right? There's a kind of a hard, fast rule there. But what we'd like to do is include in our contract a sort of an allowance for private work to be done on private property. For the building owners that want us to take that, that last 3 to 10 feet into the building, we will get a proposal from our contractor of how much extra it would cost them to go that last few feet with the new pipe. And if the property owner agrees to that, we will have them do it and we'll bill the property owner for that cost. So, they'll get the work done right into their basement. It'll be a better product in the end, and we'll have resolved the problem of not using public funds on private property. So that's the intention that we're moving forward with there. Another item is roof drains. Now, according to the Clean Water Act, you are not allowed to discharge stormwater or your roof drains into the sanitary sewers. We strongly suspect that many of the historic buildings in the downtown have roof drains that are plumbed into their sewer lines. That being said, the city is not the enforcement agency in charge of enforcing the Clean Water Act. So I do not have a lot of desire to go into people's basements and start issuing fines for not having disconnected their storm drains. Our approach for this is going to be simply this. We're going to run a storm drain lateral, essentially, a service connection up to the building face. And we're going to tell the property owners, if you want to connect your interior storm drains to the storm drain, here's where you can do it. If you would like to have some input on where we make that service connection available, let us know now, and we can put it where it's most convenient for your particular situation. And that's as far as we're going to take that. If property owners want to work with us and make that connection during construction, fantastic. If they want to come back at a later date and make that connection, great. But we are not intending to, mandate or require individual property owners replumb their buildings as part of this project.
I don't want to get too deep into it. It is why I was asking for an agenda item, delineating this, and an outreach to all the building owners
Yep.
to get them. But as long as you brought it up, what about sprinkler lines?
So the fire lines are exactly the same as the water services. Well, it's not exactly the
Sort
same.
of, yes, but no.
What's
You
that?
You touch a fire line, and you have to put a backflow.
That's right. No, so
That's a pretty big have
With-
to do for the building owners.
backflow is another one of the items. That's a separate item on my agenda. Right now, we're compiling a list of the properties that require backflow and don't have them. Those property owners will be notified that there is a requirement for backflow. Now, with the storm drain disconnection, yes, there's a cost of having to treat water that should be just going to the storm drains, but it's not a life safety issue, right? With fire lines, not having a backflow actually does present a life safety issue for the rest of the water supply. If there's a problem with an individual property owner's fire suppression system, they can be flushing a slug of
Fully understand.
contaminated, dirty, rusty water into the city's water supply.
You're talking to the wrong guy.
I-
You need the rest of downtown that does not understand this.
Right.
Because it is a substantial expense, and I really don't want to see what happened with the merchants, happen with the building owners, when the equipment shows up there and they go, I didn't know.
Yeah,
And
that's going to be.
I know that you've told them, but we need to really get very aggressive.
That will be part
about
of
these
this
details.
outreach that's going to happen. Like I said, we're still trying to sort out exactly who needs to have them and who already has them or doesn't have
Okay.
them. Okay.
All right, good.
And then the last item in that correspondence is going to address accessibility. Again, we can't do work on private property with public funds, but we want to make it as easy as possible for property owners to make accessibility improvements on their property. So to the extent that we're able to coordinate with individual property owners to adjust the sidewalk elevation at a certain point in order to allow them to make ADA compliant ramp into their building, that sort of thing, we want to have that conversation with property owners now. So those are the four big topics that we really need to coordinate with individual property owners on. And like I said, I'm hoping that that'll happen in the next couple of weeks.
We do have time. Thank you. Good.
And that is the end of our downtown discussion. With that, I would love to take your questions.
Committee, anything? Anything? Thank you. See you again soon. And Stantec guys, I missed you. It's been a while.
Be right back.
Thank you.
All right. Where are we? What? Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Motion, go ahead.
I do just have clarification about this motion, though, and how this should read, which is the options. What are we calling them? So I know what we chose, but it's asking me here to
You
define.
want to have them,
Yeah,
each one down? Yeah.
And I apologize, I should have, brought you some sort of cheat sheets to work off of. For the Railroad Square Pavilion, I would
Yeah.
refer to it as a wood frame structure with brick columns.
Sorry.
For the Central Square Fountain, you can simply say, the fountain to remain in the center or in its current location.
Option one.
Option one is fine as well.
Yeah.
And for the removable bollards, I would refer to them as deployable bollards to be purchased outside of the contract.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay.
The minute taker got the details of it, so get
Okay.
close.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to incorporate the following design preferences into the downtown infrastructure project for the Railroad Square covered pavilion, a wood frame with brick columns. For the Central Square fountain, option one in the center. For the removable bollards to remain in, to deployable bollards
Yep.
to be purchased outside of the contract.
Correct.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. You okay?
Well, I guess the concern that I have a couple of concerns. You know, and you'll deal with them at the council level. I know the two of you are not in favor of this Railroad Square covered pavilion thing, but all of this is now included in one motion. My suggestion would be just send it up. You know, vote for the motion and have your conversation at the city council level with respect to your opposition to those two things, because otherwise we have to bifurcate this thing out at that point. And then there's a. The what? We didn't put that on your list here.
Do you want to put that into the motion?
And then just, yeah, withdraw the second, just do it.
So
Second is withdrawn, so.
if I may interject, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if this is going to raise a concern with reconsideration of an item during the same calendar year. And I wonder if maybe if the council is okay with it, we could simply forget to include it as a bid alternate.
I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, we can't do
Okay.
that. Yeah, no, we can't do that.
Well, we don't have to have it as part of this motion. You go with your bid alternate.
We can certainly include it as a bid alternate, and that's easy enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I do recommend that you include it as a bid alternate, as that was the original decision. We
That's
don't
where
have
it
to
was, so
purchase
we
them.
just-
Yeah.
Not in the motion.
Right.
And my intention, when the time comes with the pavilion, I'll
Yes.
delete it from the project. So
Yeah, because it'll be back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we don't have to divide the question or anything. So your motion, as stated, is good. And the second is good.
Yes.
Anything from the public? You ready to vote? Yeah. All in favor? Boom, finally.
I'll
Yes.
put the pulleys down now so you can put your arm down.
Okay. Continued discussion, proposal to implement a protection of streets program, Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucia, Public Works Director. So this is a continuation of our discussion last month. You may recall I came forward with a proposal to change our city ordinances related to the cutting of streets in the years immediately after the road gets repaved. And I mentioned there's a number of municipalities in the city or in the state that have implemented this sort of program. The committee and the city manager raised some excellent concerns with respect to, how this program could potentially impact individual property owners that, may not have the foresight to know that their sewer line's going to fail in the next couple of years. And they don't have a lot of choice in terms of having to fix it. So we did a little more research and came up with some comparisons for you. Looked at 5 different municipalities that we could find had similar programs in their ordinances. In your packet, page 5, there's a table that compares those 5 municipalities. Concord, Dover, and Manchester all have very similar ordinances. In fact, their ordinances are almost verbatim. Clearly, they were learning from each other as they went along, with some minor, flavor differences, if you will. The biggest difference for Dover, they actually add a refundable security deposit in addition to the damage fee that they collect. So there's a $7 per square foot fee that they collect on every excavation. If it's within 2 years of being paved, they multiply that damage fee by 3. If it's within between 2 and 5 years of being paved, they multiply it by 2. But they also charge a refundable deposit of $7. We have a similar refundable deposit. We charge a refundable deposit of $500. A year after the patch is completed, we go out, inspect it. If everything is holding up, we return that deposit to the contractor. Manchester and Concord don't have that refundable deposit. The Portsmouth does it a little bit different. They have just a lump sum fee of $250 for the permit. If there's cutting within 2 years, they charge 4 times that amount. If there's cutting within 1 year, they charge 5 times that amount for the permit. And it's kind of graduated. So there's actually 5 different fees for Portsmouth. Nashua is a completely different animal. For their system, they don't have any damage fees per se. Instead, they make the contractor that's doing the excavation in a newly paved street do a much more extensive repair. So I asked the city engineer to go through and estimate how much it would cost to do that repair work for a typical size trench, maybe 4 feet wide, 15 feet long, that sort of thing. And he came up with an estimate of about $6,000, a little over $6,000 for under Nashua's fee structure in order to excavate down 3 feet within the trench to replace all that material with new imported gravel, and then mill and overlay the full width of the roadway for 50 feet in each direction. So it is a pretty hefty cost. But what you can see there, if you look at the leftmost column where it says Keene, compared to our peer communities, we're really charging a pretty modest amount for work within the roadway. So that doesn't answer the question that the city manager raised about how do we mitigate that? What's the impact to property owners? Two of the cities, Concord and Dover, both include in their ordinances a sort of an incentive to do work proactively. So what they do is if you are excavating in a street that's scheduled to be paved within the next 12 months, they waive all damage fees. So in that case, their fee would go from $1,200 or $1,100 down to the $200 or $250 permit fee. And that's how they basically incentivize it. My suggestion would be, if we were to do a program like this, would be actually to extend that to 2 years. We're able to lock in our paving list well in advance, and really within 2 years, unless there's extreme circumstances, we don't change that list 2 years out. So I would suggest that within 2 years of a scheduled paving, we waive the fee. And as part of this program, we would be required to notify property owners that live on streets scheduled for paving as early as possible, but not less than 12 months in advance of that work. Now, obviously, residents can look at the CIP and see where they are in their schedule, but we would reach out with a note or a letter to the property owner at least 12 months in advance. We would try to do it 2 years in advance to say, hey, we're paving in 2 years. If you have any work that you need to do on your water, sewer, drainage service connection, we recommend that you do it now so you can take advantage of its waiver period. So that's one way we can definitely mitigate the impacts to individual property owners. There is another option that I'm looking at, and to be quite honest, I haven't gotten a chance to get this vetted by the city attorney's office yet. So I'm not going to put Tom on the spot tonight. But if I read the chapter 31, the cities powers of cities, powers and duties of cities, just the right way, there's paragraphs in that chapter that would allow us to finance the construction of repairs. Basically, in my mind, how I would envision this working would be a property owner says, okay, you're coming through with work, paving. I know I need to replace my sewer line because I have to get it flushed every 6 months. I'm going to get a price from a contractor to get it repaired now. They get that quote, the contractor does the work, city pays the contractor for that work that's done. Contract would be selected and the contract would be agreed to by the property owner, but we make payment in the first instance. Then we can turn around and bill that property owner over a course of time, 3 to 5 years, say, as part of their quarterly utility bill. So again, it's not spending public money on private property. We just act as a financing mechanism for the property owner to be able to make that repair before we do the paving. Like I said, I haven't gotten the city attorney to bless that plan. So if it's something that the council thinks they would like to move forward with, we would have more detailed conversations, and if that's possible to do, we would come forward with an option.
We've
for doing it.
already done something similar to this in the past, so there's a model that exists for that.
And that would answer my question about the Main Street buildings, too.
Correct. Yeah.
So do we have an answer?
We have a model, we have done it in the past for sewer and water infrastructure.
Good.
Colony Court, I think, wasn't that it? Yeah. Right.
So my question to you, Don, what are we trying to do? I don't think most people plan ahead that their sewer line is going to clog and collapse.
Yeah.
They're going to find out, and then in addition to the costs, now there's a penalty.
All right. Yeah, and that's a good point. What we're not trying to do is raise more revenue, right? I would prefer not to ever have to collect on these penalties. The idea really is to try to get folks to make needed repairs in advance of the street paving, and therefore extend the life expectancy that we get out of the investment in the infrastructure. I should also say, I asked Brian to look into, like, how frequently does this, situation come up? Because it seems like every time we pave a road, we're cutting it, within 3 months. He actually looked at the last 5 years' worth of data, and their estimate is this situation only comes up about once a year. On average, over the last 5 years, they've had about one instance where we've had to cut, or a contractor has cut pavement that was freshly paved. It's probably true to say that it happens more frequently with water main breaks and city infrastructure failures that we have to repair than it does with private infrastructure.
Okay. Yes, John.
Thank you. I mean, Chair, you took a lot of what my comments were going to be. I guess that my concern is that we are assuming, I think, with, if we move forward with this ordinance, that whether it's utility companies or whether it's the property owners, whatever the case may be, they're somehow being irresponsible and waiting until the roads are paved and the sidewalks are paved, and then all of a sudden they decide that they want to do this. I just think that, the sewer and water line gods do not always follow our CIP timeline, and so I really do have this concern of, property owner finding out they've got to make some repair to their sewer line, some repair to their water line. Not only they're dealing with that unexpected cost, but now the city's coming calling as well. I understand some of our, peer municipalities do it, and, it's not a novel concept necessarily, but I'm struggling to see this in any other way, even as I understand the intent is to preserve the lifetime of the sidewalks and roads that we're paving as a city. I'm struggling to see this in any other way than just another hit to property owners, so.
Yeah, and it's a fair comment, Counselor. I don't think that most people are doing this maliciously. I will tell you, in the previous 9 years when I was in the city engineer's office, we have had instances, several I can think of, where immediately after paving, a contractor comes in and says, "Hey, I've been jetting this line every few months for the last 3 years, but now it's completely collapsed and we have to replace it." So in some instances, I think it is absolutely true that property owners do know that they've got a problem with their service, and are just putting it off as long as possible.
So what are we doing? in
So
terms of motion or action?
the motion for you is to recommend that the city manager be authorized to draft an ordinance. If the council wants to go in this direction and implement a program like this, that would be the next step. Then we would draft the ordinance and come back with something for you to review.
Yeah, Laura. Yeah.
So, first of all, I'm sure it's not malicious that people do this, that they dig up, just like it's not malicious that every time I move to a new location, they start a construction project next to me or across the street. It just happens that way. But I do look at these policies of other cities, and to me, that kind of says that maybe they have been struggling with the same thing. And even if it were only once in a while, if it is that once in a while preventable project, I think that would be worth considering. One question I would have is, a lot of these policies are by the square foot, and I'm curious, what does it cost to repair or pave a square foot in terms of these numbers? Do you have a sense of that?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Counselor, sorry.
That's all right. So the policies that I'm looking at, so it says for a street damage fee would be $5 per square foot. So I'm curious, if we were to break down a chunk of space and pave it, what would be the cost to repair that per square foot? And
Just for like a typical 2-inch overlay, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
what they're required to do, yeah. Even an approximation is fine.
I'm going to stall while
Okay.
my trusty city engineer does some math on his calculator.
Okay, well, while he's doing his math, one other question I would have is, do you think it would be beneficial to have should everywhere be the same basically, or would classes of streets have a different fee structure, for example?
I think that would get very complicated.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that would be a lot to keep track of.
I think we've stalled for almost long enough.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to respond to that last comment.
Yep.
So roughly $4 a square foot, depending on the amount of disturbance. As you do less paving, the cost of paving per ton increases, where this is a defined area, a load of tonnage, basically, for asphalt. It'd be pretty well-defined. As you get up smaller patching, its cost per square foot skyrockets, so there's some variability there. But in general, for what we're describing here, $4 a square foot.
Thanks.
Is that in addition to the contractor doing the work?
Yes, that's just the cost of restoring the surface.
In addition to the contractor himself doing the work? So this is a penalty?
Correct. So, no, I think what Brian is saying is that the cost of paving a patch is about $4 per square foot. What the contractor charges the property owner for excavating, replacing the pipe, doing all of that, that's a separate fee.
And what we're talking about is, in addition to that, is $5 a foot.
Exactly.
Whatnot to the city.
Yeah, so, for looking at some of the peer communities, Concord and Manchester, I believe, both charge $5 per square foot as a damage fee.
A penalty.
Penalty, that's right, for all patches, regardless of whether they're, new pavement or not. Every excavation, they charge a pavement damage fee. That $5 per square foot for a typical patch is right around the $500. For, say like a 13-foot was, I think, our average over the last few years, by about 4 or 5 feet.
Well, so as not to just have a philosophical conversation, I don't see any harm in the manager and you coming up with an ordinance, and then we can massage it or kill it.
Right.
Right?
I agree.
You good?
Sure.
And therefore, Jacob, anyone from the public want to speak on the subject?
Still Bradford Hutchinson. I'm thinking about this, and there's a question that I'm trying to put into words. I think this is a good idea, what it's looking at is trying to, when the city does a project, they don't want it to be torn up too soon. I mean, that obviously makes sense. And I'm in favor of this. I think it's a good idea. Oh, I know what my question was. Thank you. You mentioned other cities, Manchester, Nashua, Concord, that have something similar. And do we have any information, what has been their historical experience with assessing this or dealing with this? You're talking about this program that they have, but what's the city's experience with it? How many times do they have to use it? How effective is it? Is the city able to work with the property owner in a win-win-win situation, or is there resistance? You know, I guess I'm asking for a little bit more information, I think would be most helpful to the city manager and Public Works I like this idea and I want to move it forward. And so I'd ask, what is the more information about the actual implementation of that? What's the experience of the other cities been?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public want to weigh in? Jacob.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to draft an ordinance to disincentivize the cutting of newly paved roadways and sidewalks for a period of 5 years after construction.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further, committee, public? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And finally,
And
2025 construction season update. Good evening. Not a 20-minute meeting, I'm sorry.
For the record, Brian Roth, city engineer. Your next agenda item is a update for the committee of projects that are either going in construction in 2025 or major construction projects that are an update for the committee, essentially. Not all of these are listed are going to construction in 25. And the downtown project isn't listed. That's because it was already discussed today. It wasn't intentionally left off. So with that, Marlborough Street and the Cheshire Rail Trail project, that project's currently out to bid for construction. We have a bid opening scheduled for next Tuesday, March 4th. And then with spring anticipated for, with construction anticipated with the spring of 2025. Any questions relative to that, or?
No, you're doing what I hoped for.
For each project, I'll pause and give you a chance to ask questions, and if there are none, I'll just move on to the next one in the interest and respect of your time. The Island Street Road Reconstruction Project, it involves water, sewer, drain, sidewalk replacement, paving, and a traffic signal replacement in West Street at Island Street. That project is also currently being publicly bid with a bid opening scheduled for March 25th, so about a month from now. That project is funded by the city and is anticipated to go forward in the spring of 2025. The Key Road Drainage Replacement Project might be a project that the committee is less familiar with. This is a project that was built into the CIP under future fiscal funding years because of condition that were identified as far as the sinkholes that were being created over the existing storm drain. This project was expedited. So this currently is in preliminary design with our consultant, SLR Consulting, and is scheduled and anticipated to be bid and go out to construction in the summer of 2025, fall of 2025, finished construction. The Lower Winchester Street project, this is not scheduled for construction this year. This is in preliminary design with our consultant, McFarland Johnson. We anticipate they'll complete the preliminary design aspect in roughly June of this year, at which time DOT will be performing the property assessment and acquisitions for the project in conjunction with McFarland Johnson performing the environmental permitting for the project. This is anticipated to take roughly 18 months, and the project is currently scheduled, anticipated to be bid for the summer of 2027 construction. Okay.
Just keep on going. This public information more than.
Sure.
Just
I just want to
talk
make sure if there's anything that you, additional you want to, you need, that you have the opportunity to ask. The Transportation Heritage Trail Phase 1. This project is currently in final design with our consultant, Stantec Consulting. We're also doing, performing the right-of-way acquisitions for the project and received archaeologic and historic review approval for the project recently. We are planning to go to bid for construction of this project in the summer of 2025. The George Street Bridge Replacement Project is currently in preliminary design and moving forward to final design. Our consultant, McFarland Johnson, has an expected completion of final design for summer 2025 bidding. This project is DOT funded. It's 80% federally funded with a 20% city match. Those are the major infrastructure projects. The remaining projects are projects that are executed by the city engineering department, or division, excuse me. The 2025 road rehab project, there's a number of roads that are being rehabilitated throughout the city. The list includes Bank Street, Cedar Street, Cone Street, Hamden Street, Iceland Street, Needle Street, Queen Street, Robbins Street, Robbins Court, Russell Street, Sawyer Street, Stanhope Street, Stanton Street, Thornton Street, Warren Street, Wheelock Street, Winchester Street, from Main Street to Island Street, and Worcester Street. This project is currently out to bid with a bid opening scheduled for next Thursday, March 6th, for spring construction of the project. A similar pavement maintenance project that we have out to bid is city surface parking lot shim overlay project. The city-maintained parking lots that are included in this project this year are Gilbo East, the Library Annex, Elm Street Lot, the Wells Street Lot, Roxbury Plaza. This project is also currently out to bid with a bid opening date of Thursday, March 6th. Road rehab projects, we have two types that we're currently bidding: a fog seal project and a microsurfacing project. Microsurfacing is essentially a very thin layer of asphalt, not a full pavement depth that protects the pavement from further degradation. The fog seal is more like a sealer sort of project. The fog seal project includes Adam Court, Adams Street, Avalon Street, Bridge Street, Elliott Street, Gate Street, Gilsum Street, Kingsbury Street, Moore Farm Street, North Perham Street, Proctor Street, Richard Street, River Street, School Street, South Sullivan Road, Valley Street, Village Street, Woodburn Street, Woodbury Street, and the preservation microsurfacing project limits include Edgewood Street, Greenwood Street, Kenwood Street, Linwood Street, Park Street, Riverton Street, Walker Street, and West Street. Both those projects are currently out to bid with a bid opening scheduled for Thursday, March 13th, with anticipated construction in late spring, early summer 2025. One more on your list, and then one project I neglected to include, I apologize. The sidewalk replacement project, currently we have 3 roads scheduled for sidewalk replacement this year: Gardner Street, Jennison Street, and Willow Street. That project is currently out to bid with a bid opening scheduled for Thursday, March 6th.
Wow.
I'd be remiss to not include 2 other projects that we just received DOT approval to go to construction on. The sewer main lining project and the sewer manhole lining project will both be awarded probably within the next week. We anticipate construction in April of 2025. And that project will likely take 2 years with the amount of work involved, and we will continue to keep the council and the committee updated with a monthly update letter to your file.
I'm stunned at how much work is planned for this summer. So if anyone's wondering where their tax dollars are going, it's definitely going to be obvious. What you read down, can you prepare that so it could be in counselor's desk?
Yes,
For next council meeting?
Yes, the plan going forward is to issue a monthly update on the major projects and projects during construction to be delivered to council. Yes, correct.
Very, very
To
good.
council's mailboxes, correct.
Well, we get a lot of questions from our constituents. When's this happening and what's going on?
Of course.
There's the answer. And at the next council meeting, it'll make it a lot easier for him, instead of running down the list, just to have it right in front of him.
Of course.
Thank you.
Sure.
Very good presentation.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Questions? Anyone? Public? Motion?
Move to accept the report as informational.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now,
I think we're next, correct?
thank you. Good evening. Sorry to have misled you into thinking
I won't hold you to it, sir.
by 7.
Rick Wood, Fire Marshal and Building Official, here with Chief Jason Martin. If the council wishes, we were here last month, so my thought is to just give kind of a briefing of what's been updated and what we've done since then, and not rehash, and then answer questions. So at the last meeting, we did have some questions from the public. We did meet with that individual to try to explore the concerns they may have and made some adjustments, and finished up with the version A you have. So from our perspective, we're ready to go. The questions, we believe, have been answered, and certainly look forward to any questions you may have.
Well, you answered a big question that I asked you a couple of days ago, that in essence, this is giving choice to building owners in terms of how they communicate to the firehouse. That it sounds like more flexibility. Let me ask you this as a backwards question. What surprises are there in here? New regulations or something that,
Well, the surprise, honestly, is that we're actually reducing the regulation.
okay,
So instead of telling, and I'll just throw a number out because I didn't count the exact number of occupancy types. So instead of telling 9 occupancy types that they must connect to our system, we no longer do that. So that decision about how to communicate to the fire department is now left to the owner of, or manager of the building, as long as they do it in compliance with the National Fire Alarm Code as adopted.
Hey,
okay, sounds pretty straight on.
Just a comment, I chaired that meeting, and I just want to commend you and the public that came and asked questions. Very amicable, well-thought-out questions, well-thought-out answers, and I just want to thank you for a thorough presentation.
Thank you.
Members of the public, anyone? Yes, sir.
Jared Goodell, 39 Central Square. I was the member of the public that had concerns at the last meeting, and a lot of those were either answered in a way that I think is good for building owners, or was changed in a way that I think is also good for building owners. So, first to complain, I'll also be the first to proverbial pat on the back that met with both the chief and the fire marshal about this ordinance, and I think that it's tuned up and it makes sense for the city and the building owners.
Good to hear, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Public? Okay, therefore,
Move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2025-06.
So 3. Second.
03A,
I got it. No problem. 03A.
is that right?
Yep. 03A.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded by who?
Me.
Good, okay. Anything further? All in favor? That would be unanimous. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and our final discussion, ordinance 2025-06, relating to a stop sign on Gilsum Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Brian Ruff, City Engineer. We were in front of the committee on January 22nd to discuss this topic. Essentially, there's an existing red flashing light that on Gilsum Street where it intersects with Washington Street that no one currently stops at. So a red flashing light indicates is the equivalent to a stop sign. It should be treated as such. So in light of that, in the interest of public safety, based on our review of this intersection, we recommended that the city manager be authorized or directed to draft an ordinance, which we have included today for your review. Because there's two parts to this. This intersection is currently listed as a yield sign, which it is not. So because there's the addition of the stop sign and the deletion of the yield sign that's not there, we've coordinated with the clerk's office to make sure that we have the wording correct. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have on the ordinance.
Anybody? Sounds good.
Okay.
Move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2025-06.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further? All in favor? Boom.
Just the motion of the night?
That would be unanimous. Good job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Public Works. You got to work out. And seeing nothing further, thank you all for coming, and we are adjourned.